Hello and welcome to COGEX 2021, our festival of AI and transformational technology. Frankly, it's a good job we've got our own bookshop at COGEX, because after 3 days of remarkable conversations, you either need a week to read or a week to lie down. It has been exhausting, but in a very, very positive way. We've had professors of AI, we've had the next generation representing their visions, their hopes and dreams. We've had film stars, we've got more to come. We've got some of the greatest entrepreneurs on the planet. And so our job really is to give you the tools to navigate in a fraction of the time in many cases. So thank you to those of you who have shared your journey so far using the hashtag COGEX 2021, and indeed the many of you who have already downloaded the COGEX app. Thank you to our supporters at Accenture and at BT and at Quantum Black. Without you, we couldn't do this in the most ambitious way possible. Speaking of brilliant connections, we talk a lot about fascinating technology, but frankly, fascinating humans are what COGEX is all about. We're going to connect two, and in fact, three of them now. On the one hand, Tony Fadell. On the other, Robert Downey Jr. And in the middle, chairing our conversation, facilitating it, one of the great British entrepreneurs. Let me say something about Emma very briefly. Emma Sinclair is an entrepreneur. She's also an investor. She's one of the most thoughtful, passionate connectors of enterprise I've ever seen. She was the youngest person to list a company on the London Stock Exchange. Her own company, EnterpriseAlumni, is absolutely smashing it. She's asking the questions today, but we're very grateful to you, of course, to Robert and to Tony. But for now, here in London at COGEX Live, we'll put you in the capable hands of Emma Sinclair, Tony Fadell, and Robert Downey Jr. Thank you.
Ollie, thank you very much for that very kind and generous introduction. Today, we're talking about how investing in innovation can help solve the climate crisis, with two men at the absolute heart of this. Firstly, we have Robert Downey Jr., an actor and investor. He recently launched the ESG-focused Footprint Coalition Ventures, focused on sustainable technology, and amongst so many other roles, played a genius inventor, innovation superhero, and consummate playboy in Iron Man. Secondly, we have Tony Fadell, who is Iron Man in the real world, apart from obviously the consummate playboy part, as inventor of the iPod, co-inventor of the iPhone, Nest founder, and of course is the principal behind Future Shape. Welcome, Tony. Welcome, Robert.
Yes. Emma,
here we are. We have you both online. Hi, Emma, Robert, Tony, welcome.
Thank you.
This is an amazing technology innovation sandwich to be part of, I must say. I know we've got precious few minutes, and there's a lot of people that are excited to hear from both of you. So I'm gonna, without further ado, kick off and fire a handful of questions at you. Tony, I'm gonna kick off with you. I read recently that you first identify key themes that will matter in the future, and then you work backwards. So how do you identify what innovation looks like when it comes to climate crisis?
It's a great question. Well, it's actually a lot simpler than you might think. Just look for where the problems are. Don't go and invent problems. Just go look for problems, and we have them all around us. Especially with the climate crisis that we're in right now, we created all of these problems. Now it's our job to get out of all of these problems. So back in the day, nobody was talking about alternative meat or whatever, and we were one of the first investors in Impossible Foods, and that was 6-7 years ago. We were just going, what's the problem? And obviously this needs to get solved. The problem was, animal husbandry and farming is killing the planet. What are we going to do? We have to stop eating so much meat. So that was a problem. Then we looked over here and we saw another company called Diamond Foundry. What were they doing? They were making diamonds without tearing up the earth for mining. Another one, a battery company. We got leather without cow. So literally, we look at all the problems of the world and throwing off the CO2 or raping the oceans of the fish and the sea life. And so we go after where we are already creating the problems, and we go and try to find really innovative solutions that are not just rational, but also emotional. Things that are, and I'm not saying emotional from a climate, we're destroying the environment. Emotional meaning it's a better way of doing things and also helping the climate at the same time. That's what's the most important thing. Find the problems and let's go solve the problems we created.
Before I pass to Robert, what are the industries that are the most pressing ones that you're focused on now? Do you have a hot three that are on the top of your agenda where you're actively seeking companies solving a problem?
I think for me, the real big one that I'm seeing is plastic. Plastic everywhere. We're drowning in it. And this plastic's going to be around for 600 to 800 years, the stuff we're creating today. So we are inundated with it, and we continue to use it over and over and over in everything. And it's, you know, you walk into a Marks and Spencer, right? Look at the thing. It looks like it's something straight out of 2001, A Space Odyssey. You're like, what is all this stuff? Everything's hermetically sealed, packaged. You're like, and then all that stuff is going to be in our environment for 800 years when we only needed it for a couple of days, this packaging. So I think that's one of the things. We have more of those, but plastic is one of those we really want to try to fix. Unfortunately, it's really hard, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
We're really working on it.
Amazing. Don't pick on Marks and Spencers. They're one of my customers, Tony. I forgot to say that before we kicked off. Robert, what's your approach? Yeah, there we are. Much better. Thank you very much. Robert, what's your approach? How do you go about scouting the businesses that you want to put your money into?
Well, first I want to echo what Tony was saying. And by the way, thank you for having me. It's honestly a privilege. Just to the listening portion of this is fantastic. But the idea of identifying problems and then reverse engineering what solutions might be, I think we can all agree that we're in a spot where we kind of need a 10x of that. While there's real-time solutions that are up and running, several of which Tony and I are investing in alongside each other, the idea of what problems are these solutions maybe going to incur, and the idea of that 200 years from now, what do we not want to have gotten wrong? So our approach has kind of been abandoning templates because they're what got us here, and trying to make intuitive and informed connections of what really are the best in class technologies that we can scale, what kind of help do they need, how much and for how long, because, you know, every startup starts as a story. So troubleshooting and offsetting that likelihood of the 10 years of failure that often comes after the wins at your back is something I'm sure as a coach and as mentors that you both are, you know how critical that is for some of these younger companies. And then I think supercharging these scalable technologies through media and the audience that I'm fortunate to have is another way to kind of normalize that we're in this moment. It's not going anywhere, and we have to embrace it in a smart and calculating way.
I see you do that incredibly with your Twitter account, Robert, really just putting things into the mainstream that others might not even thought of. Again, any specifics from you, Robert? Any particular areas that have your close attention right now?
Well, this is something that we're really starting to look at seriously now, but energy storage is going to be so critical. It's always a bottom line. I mean, it goes back to Star Trek, right? You know, the dilithium crystals can't hold out much longer. So, you know, I think we've been foaming the runway for that understanding that's a huge one. But I just want to say this too, that, you know, that Tony and I are in this similar strange position, and that we've both been part of multi-billion-dollar success stories that were not expected based on the company or IP's previous solvency. And I love that phrase, science is magic that works. That's Kurt Vonnegut. There's this general disinterest in science, but everybody wants the magic. And this cultural moment that we're in right now, whether the artifact is a piece of tech or a piece of entertainment, there's a design to the process of getting there. It's damn near impossible to explain. And you've had this kind of, I don't even want to call it success. I want to say that life put the three of us in a position where it's hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. So what's the onus is to understand the complexity of the opportunity and the challenge that climate crisis is, and then apply those same creative problem solving techniques to this new challenge.
Very well said. And I've made a mental note that your best ideas come from Star Trek. So presumably you watch a lot of sci-fi. That's what I'm taking from that question, Robert. Moving on, a lot of innovations and technologies in the climate are very expensive. I'm thinking of the price of solar, the price of wind, which used to be so much more expensive, but now it's not. And the market is eating both of those up. So I wondered, when do both of you see these investments becoming more mainstream? Tony, shall I start with you?
So yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, we're seeing things coming online much faster. I started investing 10 years ago, and it was really difficult to get anyone to pay attention, especially after, the kind of the green wave of the early 2000s that ended up in a disaster for almost all investors. So most people didn't want to even talk about it. But now it has totally changed. And literally the last, I'd say 2 years, especially after Greta Thunberg came out at the WEF conference, and then COVID hit, it's been a total drastic shift into the right direction to fund these things. And we're taking more and more risks, and more people are putting things on the line, and we're starting to get governments to do the right thing. So I'm more bullish than I ever have been. I've been trying to do green investments for over 10 years, and now's the time. And so yes, they're still nascent. These are early stage companies. They're 20, 30 people doing the right thing. But now we're getting outsized capital, hundreds of millions of dollars, to be able to scale these technologies much more quickly than the typical 10 to 12 year bootstrap kind of cycles. And big companies are seeing that they can innovate themselves in certain ways, and they're working with small companies, not just buying them. So I'm very optimistic. But we're still talking that the things that we do now, it takes 10 years. It always does. Maybe we'll get a few things that are 5 years or 7 years away. So whatever we're doing today is going to be in place in 2030, 2032, 33. That's why we have to work so hard right now, because if we ever want to get to 2040 or 2050 and try to get some kind of carbon neutrality, we don't have many years to get it right, because it takes so long to get these things into the system and scaled.
Robert, I'd love your take on that too.
Well, I mean, I think in the 21st century, we're all used to that ticking clock, and some folks innovate better under pressure. I feel that some of them are going to be staples. Some are going to be change agents within existing companies, and then others are just good old-fashioned cleanup. So, for instance, the cloud paper, the bamboo toilet paper, or the turntide, these switch reluctance motors, which were a 19th century technology that only now with this super evolved AI are increasing the efficiency, threefold. They're not sexy, they're staples. And so I think that those sorts of things will never go out of style. Something like Aspiration Bank, a neobank, just to put your daily spending into where you're offsetting your carbon footprint. I don't have to do anything to be affecting change. And then like Tony was saying with RWDC, this biominescent plastic company, that really is about a massive cleanup. And I was reading something recently about, anything that can effectively fix 1% of the problem gets you so ahead of the game, because once you have your toe in the door, then the rest of that mosaic that can move the needle kind of, you've pushed open the door for it. But I'm relatively new to this. Put me in, coach. I would love to follow up with both of you and complete my wildly incomplete education on the matter.
I'm going to vote for Tony being the best source of education on that, but I totally want to be in on that conversation. So
Look,
flagging that whilst we're on camera. I don't want to miss it.
We're already tracking each other. He's already up to where we're at, so it's great to see. No, absolutely. We're investing together in all these companies, and it's not like we're colluding on it.
And as an aside, I read that you were both investing in a company that's just taken offices in Gateshead. That was completely unrelated to this panel. So I think you're investing in things together. Have you crossed paths professionally? Have you both looked at deals in the same space?
You're introducing us for the first time, but I have to say again, going back to making informed, intuitive connections. I'm in this moment where just yesterday, we hired this guy, John Schieber from TechCrunch. He was talking about the Disruptors Prize that this young entrepreneur who's doing a software made, and then Paltrow, Gwyneth, and her fella invite us over to dinner, and it's that guy. And then will.i.am is sitting there, and he's talking to him about how to bring all of this technology into Boyle Heights, where he used, the other side of the fence where he comes from. And I get chills. You know how it goes. It's not about wishful thinking, but when that little golden thread of connections is happening, you're on the right path. So again,
it's so funny that you hired John, because I know John, and John and I have done a bunch of stuff together. Yeah. I love it. So now we're going to really be talking to each other, and we're gonna like put forces together. Let's go, man. Let's go.
But this is it.
Out of this, what? Hold on a second. It's the three of us. I thought, seriously.
Okay, Emma, come on, anytime. Come on. Us.
I want to get in on this game. I'm here to ask questions, but seriously, I've got a question to follow up with, because we just touched on Greta and conferences. I wanted to ask you both. Many say that fighting climate change is a private affair and a public sector affair. So I wondered, what do global leaders need to do in order to shift the business community towards sustainability? Because obviously you're both very focused on this. You don't have to be convinced of why investing in this space matters, but I'd love to hear, because obviously G7 was last week. What are your thoughts? What should world leaders be doing to help people like you, but also to help, your average person understand how urgent this is, and that they need to make decisions, like Robert said, to spend money intelligently, to spend money in businesses that are caring about the things that we're talking about today. I'm going to go with Robert first, because you're both looking at me blankly, and I'm going to shake stuff up. I'm going to shake it up and go with Robert first, just to keep everyone on their toes. That's a separate panel, that topic, Robert.
I mean, I'm kind of two minds, because one is let them do their thing and let us do what we're doing in the quote unquote private sector. But I think more and more I feel drawn to Sacramento and to DC, but I want to go there with something ironclad. But to me, it's discernment on their part, legislation, and probably more than anything, kicking the tires on what they're going to get behind before they give it political leverage. Because there's this groundswell of wild optimism. I think there's going to be a lot of imposter innovations. This is just my opinion. I think it's become a bit of a crowded bandwagon and this kind of feel-good space. And we don't want to politically have it become a spectacle that doesn't yield results. We know how inefficient government can be. There's nothing less efficient than a bunch of people trying to write a sentence, let alone trying to get a piece of legislation together with celebrities or big companies seemingly lobbying to do the right thing. So I think of this as like the guest list of the after party of a movie premiere. It's like, I really wish them well, because it seems to me like, I want to just stay in my own lane, but I also want to caution them against being willy-nilly with the feel good, because you don't get to make too many poor decisions for the right reasons when we're talking about legislation.
100%. And it's almost like panels for startups. There's a lot of talk, a lot of corporates that talk about supporting innovation, and really, for those of us that want to get things done, and certainly someone like me that's been around a while and heard a lot of that, it's like, that's all fantastic, but where's the cash and where's the deals, really? Right. It's just like, just get on with the things that matter. Tony, I'd love your take on that as well.
Well, I have to agree with Robert on many of those points. I do think we need a little bit of government assistance on certain things, and I've seen some interesting policies come out. We get things like incentives or subsidies for EVs, right? So they're like, oh, we'll subsidize your EV for $25,000 or $5,000, whatever. But then I found another government who said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take the price of ICE cars and we're going to make them more expensive. So in other words, you're not getting bribed to go buy something that might feel inferior. You're actually going to pay more for the old technology, as opposed to what the right price is for the new technology. And I was like, oh, that's a great nudge. That's the way we should be thinking about it. We should be incentivizing we should be pricing up the old stuff, whether that's carbon credits or, or carbon taxes, what have you, and then making sure that it allows for these new innovations to come out and be able to be price challenged with the incumbents. That's the biggest thing we need to do from a government standpoint. But, again, we have to just go and do it ourselves, because that's the only way it's going to prove that it works. Government is retroactive, not proactive. Entrepreneurs are proactive, and we're going to get it done. We just have to show the right ways, and we have to make sure that we're not putting the thumb on the scale of the old companies, giving them money or allowing investments in big oil or big coal or whatever it is. They need to be investing it over here and penalizing them if they're in the wrong thing. That's what we need to do, and let us run as fast as we can.
And do either of you come up with resistance when you talk on these subjects? Do you find that you get a lot of pushback, whether it's from lobbyists or corporations? Tony, perhaps start with you.
Yeah, on my Twitter feed, when I start on my my plastic rants and on other types of rants, all of a sudden I get all these PR people and marketing people coming at me like, let's talk. And no, it's really not like that in the company. And stop, saying Coke is the worst or Pepsi is the worst or Dannon. And I'm like, yes, it is. And I'm going to keep saying it. And I don't care how much you're going to try to greenwash it. You got to fix your problems. And, and so we're going to have to keep stirring the pot. And, it's great to have someone like Robert with his global, image to go in and actually call them out, because that's what we have to do. We have to keep calling these big companies out and showing what they're doing wrong for the environment.
It's amazing for those of us that don't have your clout and power, both of you, for you to be able to do that. Because for many of us, we have to tread more carefully, whether it's because we have a job or an employer that we have to do that for, or investors, whatever it might be. There's only so much you can speak out when you don't have that independence. So, to both of you, actually, thank you for doing that, because you're saying the things that a lot of us can't say. Robert, a different question for you, because I'm conscious that we're running out of time and I've got another 150 to get through before we finish in 8 minutes. But a question that I've often been asked, and I wonder what your view is: how long will innovations take to be carbon neutral? Because obviously a lot of the innovation that takes place now is consumes a lot of carbon. Is that something you give thought to?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I tend to think about that a lot. And just to double back to the previous question, geo-design can be our best friend. It gets a bit of a bad rap, but geo-design needs permission from local governance to occur. LA is, as a matter of fact, young Pierre, who was helping with my tech challenge before, his mom is heading up, taking over the LA River, 51 miles of what's going to be like a belt line or a high line. And there's such opportunity to innovate there, but we need to get quick permissions across the board. This is where we have to do that one hand washes the other with our our governing. But as far as how long, each one is like a thumbprint. I take a bit of guff because I believe that this EV revolution has not yet figured out all of the waste that it's going to leave behind. All the more reason to look at energy storage. So I'm an equal opportunity destroyer when it comes to what's on the right or on the left. And as a matter of fact, I lean sometimes a little more toward the conservative attitude that, well, what are these big petrochemical companies supposed to do? What is Coca-Cola supposed to do when it created the greatest supply chain infrastructure in the history of any industry? You can get a Coca-Cola in the middle of the Mali. So how can we take what they've done right and encourage them to repurpose these big brands? Maybe they're not willing. Maybe they spend billions of dollars trying to greenwash so they don't have to change. But maybe there's a way to encourage them to not have to become extinct, because the winds are not in their sails henceforth. So I think about that a little.
Thank you. And a question on where you both sit, quite literally. Robert, in your world, especially Hollywood, is there a responsibility for those visible to help educate the world? I know that you feel extremely passionately about this, but do you think it's a responsibility that the industry should carry?
No. And by the way, many of us shouldn't be even carrying a bucket of water. We should be doing our job and going home. But it's an opportunity if you genuinely feel drawn to it. Like for me, the idea of being able to educate myself as I share that with my audience, or like the other Tony, this Tony Stark guy I got to play, he made science cool to a whole generation. So if I have any responsibility, it's that participate in grounding that enthusiasm into the future of science-minded citizens of our world. Because I hope someone young is watching this, and I hope they get a better idea than the three of us put together, because a lot of that is going on, and that would be the best artifact we could leave.
Yeah. Change, it has to be in your DNA. You literally have to feel it. Otherwise, as you say, it's going to be superficial and it's not going to last, because, that change gets hard, whatever that might be. Tony, you obviously left Silicon Valley for Paris. Is one ecosystem more aware of climate change to the other?
I think
Robert seems like he's very upset that he lost you from the United States.
Well, being in Paris, being in, and also living in Indonesia as well, and looking what's going on. If I can compare the three worlds, and there are people who are concerned in Silicon Valley about this, but it's not general. Like, they're still funding, social media companies, social networks. It's like, come on, all right. And then here in the EU, there's a lot of stuff going on where it's like, okay, you're going to make a battery factory. At the same time, you have to make a battery recycling factory. You can't do one without the other. So you have to think about the circularity. And if you look at all the EU directives on circularity and things like that, it's amazing what's going on when I see what's here. Then I also compare it to Indonesia, it's a lot of lip service, and it's gonna be private industry who's gonna make the changes. Yes. So, there's different factors in each place, but really holistically, where I've seen the best has been out of Canada, has been in the EU areas, where it's and the Nordics. That's where I've seen a lot of interesting stuff. The mobility, the micro-mobility stuff here in Paris and throughout cities in Europe, about how we have more bike lanes and how we have more, electric transport and getting rid of ICE cars and trucks and things. It's wonderful to be here, because you get hope, and then you can see solutions. You can try things and go, okay, what do I take to Indonesia? We're actually starting a company in Indonesia around fixing pollution problems and ICE cars and motorcycles. So it's great when you have this kind of position and you're kind of global. You can see these things and you can repopulate things in different places and see the best of not just solutions, but also the best of policy, and try to affect some things. But again, this is happening in different places around the world, not always the same. And some people are still trying to get up to where we were in the 80s in the US. They're still going, well, I still want what they had. And, we still have a lot of conflict that we haven't gone through yet in terms of, the haves and the have-nots. And we're going to have to think not just in the US and the rest of the world at the higher level GDPs of just continuing to live the way we are. We're going to have to make some changes, just like the people in the lower rungs are going to have to make changes. We can't just say we're going to all be on, flying cars and personal jets and stuff. It's not going to work that way. And people forget, in 2050, once we get carbon neutral, if we get carbon neutral, we got to stay carbon neutral. Yep. We can't just go, oh yeah, we lost our weight, and now we're going to go and binge again at the salad bar or the whatever it is at that point. So we're going to have to learn, just like lifestyle changes is how you make yourself healthy. We're going to have lifestyle changes to make our planet healthy. Okay, and it's not just going to be all technology is going to solve it. We're going to all have to look into each other and go, what are we doing differently? Because it's going to take all kinds of solutions, personally, society, government, as well as technology.
Well, and Emma, better than most because of your own diet. I mean, people have been saying this for 100 years.
How did you know I was vegan? Robert, how on earth did you know? I've been vegan for 25 years. That's good knowledge.
Exactly. Some people have been doing it so long that it's like it's nobody even pays attention, because it is that personal thing. And ultimately, we love choices. And if we can just gear our choices toward things that are helping reduce all of this to begin with, that's going to be great.
And that, it's great to no longer be the weird one when I go out for dinner, but it's taken about 23 years for that to happen. I've got to be honest with you. Now, I tell anyone under 25 that I've been vegan for more than 25 years, and they just look starstruck, probably like people look at you too every time they meet you. But I think that's a really great moment to finish. And I Tony, I loved your comment about, in the same way that we look to get healthy, we're going to look to start living in a way that makes the planet healthy. So I guess really, I need to thank you both for helping us make healthier choices, because that's really what you're helping us to do. So thank you very much for today. Robert, Tony, thank you for waking up early, late. You're in different parts of the world. And we look forward to watching all the things you invest in, and hopefully following the two of you as well. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a ton, Emma. That was great.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah,
Robert, we're gonna go do some more stuff together. And Emma,
Great.
if you want to join, come on in. We're gonna
Emma,
make it happen.
you should help us strategize what we can do together.
Send the jet with some vegan snacks, and I'm willing to do it.
Only if it has green fuel. Only if it has green fuel. All right.
Thank you
guys.
both. Amazing to speak to you. Take very good care.